Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is Thursday, I hope you all are doing well. It is the game review to Everton's 4-1 defeat. No matter how many times I say that and think about that scoreline, it still doesn't really settle in about how bad Tuesday night was. 4-1 defeat to Bournemouth on Tuesday night in the Carabao Cup. Everton crashing out at the third round stage with a heavy defeat to Bournemouth's second string team. Really, now granted, Everton made a lot of changes, 11 to be precise, and Frank Lampard completely overhauled the team going into this one. However, I still think that Everton team should have been more than good enough to go to the Vitality Stadium and win. Ultimately, it means that Everton have crashed out of the Carabao Cup at the third round. We notoriously don't do well in this competition whatsoever. A horrible history in the competition, and this is just another one of those nights to add to that horrible history for when we look back on one day to think, wow, remember that. Third round, as I said, and Everton now have only realistically one trophy that we can win this season, and even that one has been largely dominated by the top 4 or 5 teams over the course of the last few years or so. So, massively disappointing. Obviously, we done the instant match reaction directly after the game, and it got a lot of traction, the instant match reaction, and I appreciate that because it's the first one in a while that has sort of gathered a lot of pace and a lot of, a lot of people were wanting to get involved and, have their say on the situation. Since then, I haven't really thought about the game, if I'm being honest with you. I've tried to block it out. I've tried to ignore it. I've tried to put it behind me and focus on, Bournemouth away on the weekend as well in our last game, of course, before that World Cup break. I've tried to rationalise and use every reason as to why, everything's okay and why we'll be okay and why it wasn't the worst result in the world and it doesn't really matter in this, that and the other. But the reality is it was absolutely horrendous. It was a horrendous night. It was a horrendous performance. It was a horrendous game of football. And it was embarrassing, and it was what should be a wake-up call. For me, it should have the exact same effect as the defeat to the defeat to Newcastle did, in the sense of that the players were obviously given a metaphorical kick up the arse, shall we say, and come out the week after and beat Crystal Palace, and hopefully that's the case on the weekend in the very same fixture but in the Premier League, because it just simply wasn't good enough. It simply wasn't good enough, and you know what? It's not even the scoreline that pisses me off. It's not even the goals that we conceded that piss me off, because I understand that, 3 of those 5 defenders that played, 4 of those 5 defenders that played, although I don't think Ruben Vinagre was particularly at fault for any of the goals, and I actually think he had quite a relatively good game in terms of that. He didn't really do anything wrong, and he was solid enough during the 90 minutes. But, I understand that 4 of that back line will not play consistent football for Everton ever again, and maybe mightn't even play for Everton ever again. I'm talking Michael Keane, I'm talking Yerry Mina, I'm talking Mason Holgate, Ruben Vinagre as well, and even the goalkeeper, Asmir Begovic. So the goals that we conceded were absolutely woeful defensive mistakes, and there's only really one that worries me a little bit. There's only really one that for me was of any concern, and that was the 4th one, because it come from a Nathan Patterson mistake, and obviously Nathan Patterson will play regular football again for Everton because he's our number 1 right back. The other 3, I'm not really too interested in, because obviously, we know they've come from players that just simply aren't good enough to play for Everton Football Club anymore. Michael Keane, Mason Holgate are nowhere near the level that they need to be, and obviously aren't anywhere near the level of James Tarkowski and Conor Cody, and Yerry Mina, who, he wasn't at that level on Tuesday. We still know he's a very good player, but his injuries and his unreliability means that he's very unlikely to play consistently for Everton ever again, and mightn't even be here, come the end of the January transfer window. The more frustrating thing for me is our forward line, and it's the title of this live stream, and it's something that I think we've spoken about a lot recently, and that is that Everton's issue at the moment is definitely not in defence, and whilst the issue on Tuesday, was the defence because it was so bad, the issue generally isn't the defence, because we know James Tarkowski and Connor Cody will come back into this team, and the pair of them will be absolutely fantastic. My worry is Everton's forward line on Tuesday consisted of Neil Maupay, who will play on Saturday in the Premier League and will play up until the January transfer window, because we found out the news today that Dominic Calvert-Lewin has suffered a dislocated shoulder. We have just done a video talking about Dom's injury and talking about the World Cup call-ups. That is going to go up directly after this live stream. It's 25 minutes long, something like that, and it's just me doing a little news video where we sit down and we just talk about the latest stuff that is going on, and we talk about Dominic Calvert-Lewin's injury in that video. But anyway, I digress. Neil Maupay, who will play Premier League games of football for Everton until at least the January transfer window. Anthony Gordon, who will play Premier League games of football until the January transfer window for Everton. Demarai Gray, who, come on and scored, and I feel like it would be a little bit harsh of me to sit here and massively criticise Demarai Gray based on that, because he come on and he had an impact. He done ultimately what he was put on to do, and that was to, try and affect the game. And Dwight McNeil, who will play consistent games of football for Everton until at least January. Now that forward line, which is the forward line that will play for Everton throughout the course of this season now, and the forward line that we rely on to score goals, and the forward line that we rely on to win us games of football, couldn't muster up more than 2 shots on target against Bournemouth's second side. Now, again, I mean, absolutely no disrespect to Bournemouth when I say this, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to the job that Gary O'Neill's doing there, or them as a football club. But, when doing these reviews, you sort of have to have an element of context about the club you are playing, and the club we were playing were a side that in awful form in the Premier League. Now, I know they've had a little bit of an upturn in form since the new manager, but they'd still lost 4 games on the bounce prior to that game on Tuesday. Below Everton in the Premier League, which is a task in itself at the moment, and a team with a completely changed 11 itself. I think they'd made 6 or 7 changes or something like that. So, as I said, defensively, I know that Mina, Keane, Holgate, Vinagre, Begovic, they're much of a muchness. They won't be playing for Everton in the Premier League, so it doesn't matter. Forward line, not being able to create more than 2 chances, and not being able to look like creating more than 2 opportunities. Bearing in mind, one of them was a worldy goal by Demarai Gray. I think the other one was maybe a shot by Gray as well, which was saved comfortably. Not being able to create anything, or even look like creating anything in 90 minutes against Bournemouth's second string team is massively, massively, massively worrying. And as I said, we have just done a video that will be going up on the channel after this one, talking about Dominic Calvert-Lewin's injury and what that means for Everton and what that means for the future in terms of the future of Dominic Calvert-Lewin at the football club. The reality is we're probably unlikely to see Dom now before the new year, maybe. Again, we don't know the extent of it, and we don't know the extent of how long he's going to be out for, but this is going to be Everton's forward line for the game on the weekend. Luckily enough, we've then got a break. I tweeted it out the other day. During this game, I've never looked forward to a World Cup as much as this in my life, and yet I've got no interest in the World Cup whatsoever, because this is a break that Everton desperately, desperately need. But the biggest worry for me is that was a forward. That wasn't a second string forward. That's not like we're sitting here saying, yeah, but you've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin to go back in and he's fit, and you've got Richarlison to go back in, and you've got Mohamed Kudus to go back in there, or you've got Cody Gakpo to go back in there, so don't worry about that. That is a forward line that will play for Everton every week until January. Now, obviously, we've got the break, but you know what I'm saying. And we saw Anthony Gordon play on Tuesday night. Absolutely horrendous. We saw Demarai Gray come on and scored the goal, and again, it'd be a little bit harsh of me to have a go at Demarai Gray, but we know typically, he does that every now and then he'll go missing for 5 months. We had Maupay play, who had no impact on the game whatsoever, regardless of whether that's his fault or not his fault, or whether that's the fault of the system and the way Frank Lampard is playing at the moment. He still did nothing. And you had Dwight McNeil, who done absolutely nothing. That's the worrying thing for me. That's the real worrying thing. Now, okay, midfield-wise, you might be able to say, well, look, the midfield was different. You had Tom Davis in there, who again was really poor. You had James Garner in there, who I thought was okay. He's probably the best out of that midfield bunch. He's probably the best on the pitch for Everton, really, in the game. But you've got Iwobi to go back in. Or when Iwobi come on, he looked interested. You've got Onana and Garner to go back in, and that's fine. But Onana, Iwobi, for as good as Iwobi's been this season, he's not scored. For as good as Garner's been this season, he's not scored. For as good as Onana's been this season, he's not scored. The goals we are relying on coming from that forward line, who are showing very little impetus, very little quality, very little consistency, very little cutthroat ability in front of goal, very little dynamism, very little creativity, very little of everything, really. And, Everton have got, even including the World Cup break, I mean, if we have a little look at our fixtures, we've obviously got Bournemouth at the weekend. That's one game. We then have Wolves and Manchester City before January, the window even opens. We play Brighton on the 3rd of January, so that's 3 games. Because let's be honest, we're not going to bring somebody in before the 3rd of January. That's 3 games, including a game against Manchester City, which I think a lot of people would write off anyway. With players that don't look like they could, hit their undies with a fart at the moment. Or certainly do it on a consistent basis. Anthony Gordon will chip in with the odd goal, and Damari Gray may chip in with the odd goal, but doing it on a consistent basis is what we need, and that's my worry, is that we haven't got that at the moment. As I said before, and I will say it again, my worry isn't the fact we conceded 4 goals, because one of them was a deflection. One of them is a little bit of a worry because it come from Nathan Patterson, but again, match sharpness and stuff like that, he's been faultless this season. He was allowed 1 mistake. The other 2 where Mason Holgate falling on his arse and giving the ball away. Yerry Mina standing 3 mile away from his man. Michael Keane not knowing there's a fella running in behind him. And I can't even remember what the 3rd one was. Oh, the 3rd one was awful defending again. It's not even the fact that we only scored 1. As I said, I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's not the fact that we're not scoring. It's the fact that, it is the fact that we're not scoring, but it's not as much the fact that we're not scoring. It's the fact that we don't look like scoring. We don't look like creating. We don't look like a team that can, absolutely rip a team to bits. Now, a little bit of a contradiction, because the Crystal Palace game, we did look like that. And whether that was, because Palace were standoffish and because they had a bad day at the office, or they allowed us to control the ball, or they, misplaced passes, or whatever the reason for what might be. Maybe it was completely because Crystal Palace were awful. Maybe it was because this Everton team have got it in them, but they just haven't got the consistency in it, or the want to do that on a weekly basis. But I'm seriously worried about the importance that we have on January, because the reality is our importance on the January transfer window is ridiculous, and I mean absolutely ridiculous. I can't express to you how important it is that Everton go out and buy a striker in January, a replacement for Dominic Calvert-Lewin effectively, and as I said, I'm going to upload the video after this one talking about why I think we now need to not move on from Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but plan for the future without him. I'll go into more detail in that video, but we need that. Ultimately, we need another winger. A winger that is actually capable of scoring goals. A winger that is actually capable of creating chances. A winger that is capable of turning up and offering more than just throwing a stupid challenge in and potentially getting yourself sent off. That's what we need, and that's 2 massive asks for the January transfer window. Bearing in mind, teams will understand and will know that's what Everton need, and therefore if there is any player that Everton are linked with, he will all of a sudden be worth 10, 15, 20 million pound more than what he would have been in the summer, because teams will know Everton are desperate. And that's a big worry, because we can't go out of January without somebody who is capable of scoring goals in the Premier League and winning games. We simply can't. We can't come out of January with another bit part striker, you know, a Michy Batshuayi, for example, who we've been linked with, who, you know, you just know isn't really going to offer anything. We need somebody that, you know, you can never make guarantees in football, and I understand that, but we need somebody that we look at and we go, yeah, you know, he's going to score 8-9 goals before the end of the season and we'll be okay. Dare I say a Kevin Campbell-esque signing, and I need to get Kev back on the channel soon because, you know, I absolutely love Kevin. He's brilliant, and Everton really, really need a Kevin Campbell now because Dominic Calvert-Lewin obviously is out. We don't know how long he's going to be out for, but even when fit, there's no guarantees that, you know, Dom is going to be able to hit the form that, you know, he hit under Carlo Ancelotti. So that was my biggest worry coming out of this game. It wasn't necessarily the goals we conceded. It wasn't necessarily losing 4-1. Yes, I'm disappointed that we're out of the cup because, you know, I'm 24 years old and I've never seen Everton win a trophy. And likely, before I do see Everton win a trophy, I'll be 25 because I'm not holding any hopes on us having a good FA Cup run this season either. And that's, you know, a quarter of a century old without seeing your football team win a trophy, which is completely unacceptable. Yes, I'm annoyed and frustrated because we lost, and we lost in such a way, and this, that, and the other, but I'm more worried about where did the chances come from? Not even just where the goals come from. Where did the chances come from? Because we're all well good sitting here saying, yeah, we've got Mopé, Cam. Or Mopé's a goal scorer, he can score goals. Who's creating the chances for Mopé? Are we putting all our hope now on Alex Iwobi? It's Alex Iwobi's job now because he's had the most assists this season and he's looked the best player. So is all of our hopes going on Alex Iwobi being able to create for Neal Mopé? Again, little sneak preview, but I spoke in the video that will be going up after this live stream. I spoke about how this is now a really, really interesting time for Everton Football Club and specifically for the manager, because there's been a lot of murmurs about the manager over the last couple of days or so, and sacking talk and this, that and the other, and whether you think that's premature or whether you think it's warranted, it's happening. Whatever you think of it, whatever your opinion is of it, some people might, you know, think it's time for Frank Lampard to be sacked. Some people might think, no, get behind him, he's built a rapport with the fans, we need to trust in the process, whatever it may be. Whatever your opinion is, the talk is there, and the talk is there for a reason, and that's because we've just been absolutely twatted 4-1 away from home by Bournemouth in the cup, but also because the questions are starting to be asked now and the problems are starting to arise, and this, for me, is a big, big, big decision for Frank Lampard to make. Dom's out the equation now. Now, okay, Frank may get away with going to Bournemouth and playing in the same way, and we may nick a point because we've got Cody and Tarkowski back, or we may get a win because somebody might pop up with a little bit of magic. I'm not specifically referring to the game at the weekend, but after that World Cup, for those 3-4 games that Dominic Calvert-Lewin mightn't be available before January, and let's be honest, before we can make any real move in January, which will be mid-January, it won't be by the 3rd, what does Frank Lampard do to accommodate Neal Mopé? Because the style and tactic of lumping the ball up and hoping that Neal Mopé will win a header against two centre-halves who are usually 6 foot plus in height is not working and will never work because Neal Mopé isn't that good in the air. He isn't that dominant in the air. It will work on occasion with Dominic Calvert-Lewin because of his presence and his dominance in the air. It won't work with Neal Mopé. So it will be really, really interesting to see how Frank Lampard adapts the way in which Everton play and the style in which Everton play to suit Neal Mopé, because I'm still not ready to jump in the boat of what an awful signing Neal Mopé is, what a waste of money. Now again, I'm not by any sense of the imagination sitting here saying Neal Mopé is amazing and he'll be great for Everton and he'll be the best player we've ever had, because it'd be absolutely stupid of me to sit here and say that. But I do think it's incredibly unfair to judge him on the basis of a system that is not suited to him. It's clearly not suited to him, his playing style, the way he plays, the type of footballer that he is. So for me, it's completely unfair to sit here and have a go at him. It's completely unfair to sit here and say, he's absolutely useless, Neal Mopé, when we're playing him in a system that doesn't suit him. You know, if we played Dominic Calvert-Lewin in a different system, you'd have conversations about that. If you played, you know, James Tarkowski at left wing back, we could sit here and say, he's not very good because he's not a left wing back. He's not, you know, he's not got the pace or whatever to be a left wing back. So I'm not really yet willing to sit here and completely write Neal Mopé off. I'm not saying he's amazing and I'm not saying he's the answer, and I'm absolutely not suggesting that even if we do change the system that he can be the striker going forward, because we need a striker in January whether we have a change of system or not. me big sort of question and wonder is why, if we weren't going to change system and we were going to persist with this long ball up to the striker to take it down, why we even signed Neil Maupay in the first place, if I'm being honest with you. Why we didn't just go out and sign another 6'4", 6'5" centre forward who could do the exact same job as Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I'll never know. The fact we signed Neil Maupay means we've now got to change in order to suit Neil Maupay, because he's the only one really that you can see in that team scoring goals consistently. And some people might disagree with that, and some people might say, I can't even see him scoring goals consistently, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But he's the only one in that team that I look at and I can see being a consistent goal scorer for Everton. Yeah, Demarai Gray will step in with the odd goal, fine. You get involved with the odd goal, yes. You might have Anthony Gordon who will step in with the odd goal, absolutely fine, sound. They're not going to score every week, and they're not going to play well every week because they're not good enough and they're too inconsistent to do that. Neil Maupay, again, mightn't be good enough, but we don't know that until he's being given the chance in the right system to suit his strengths. We don't know whether or not he will be good enough, and ultimately, I think he deserves to be given that opportunity. And if he isn't, then, which some people will say he isn't, but if he isn't, then we address that in January. I do think the manager has to take blame for this one. Given there's a World Cup break coming up, I think the expectation of certain players having to play 2 games in 1 week wasn't particularly all that much to ask for. Now I get Frank Lampard may have wanted to bring in some of the the players that are on the cusp of first team football to give them an opportunity, or they've been training hard, or they've been asking for the chance. And Frank said something really, really interesting after the game. Actually, he said something along the lines of, when you've been training well and when you've been working hard and you've been asking for an opportunity and you get an opportunity and you play like that, you have to think about that's the reason why you're not playing, or maybe that's why you're not playing as much because of the way in which we performed. And I've got no doubt that is referring to Michael Keane and Mason Holgate, not so much Yerry Mina because he's been injured, but definitely Michael Keane, Mason Holgate, Tom Davis in the midfield as well. I've got absolutely no doubt in my mind that is referring to those players when he's saying that. But that leads me to then think, well, was Frank really that bothered about this game? Was he really that bothered? And maybe, listen, a manager's never going to come out, are they, and say, before a cup game, listen, I'm not asked about this because it completely devalues the competition. And, knowing Everton, if Frank Lampard had said that, he'd have probably got fined for it. But the team and the way in which Everton set up did make me think, well, were we that bothered about this competition? Was there that much impetus put on it? Was there that much seriousness put on it? Because we made 11 changes to this team. Now I still think that team should have been good enough to win the game, and maybe that's what Frank Lampard was thinking. And maybe when Frank made the changes, it wasn't a case of, I'm not that arsed. It was a case of, well, these players have been working hard, they want to play, so I'm going to give them the chance to play, and they should be good enough to beat this Bournemouth team. And then they weren't. But I think whenever you make 11 changes, you are asking for trouble. For multiple reasons. The players aren't used to playing together. Overall, generally, most of them just aren't good enough, and we know that, and that has been proven time and time again. We don't need to have that conversation. But also, they haven't played together. They probably don't know each other an awful lot. They don't know the system, the style, because they haven't played. And listen, you can say, these are Premier League footballers. They train every day. They should know the system. It's not how it works. Whether we want it to work or not, whether it should work like that or not, it's not how it works. Also, pardon me, Everton aren't good enough to make that many changes. It's as simple as that. Now, we were playing a Premier League team on Tuesday. Now, whether or not it was a Premier League team, their second team, and whether or not that Premier League team hasn't been doing particularly well, we were still playing a Premier League team. We weren't playing a League One team. We weren't playing a League Two team. We were playing a team that are used to playing at the top level. Players that train, for the Premier League club under a caretaker Premier League manager, but still a team that are at that level, and players that are around that level. Not a League Two club where you're looking and thinking, yeah, well, even with a second string team, he should be okay. Yeah, Everton haven't got the quality to make 11 changes to a team and then come up against the Premier League team and expect us to turn up and do a job. We simply haven't got the quality to do that. And that showed. Now, okay, you could say, well, I'm a bit worried about if James Tarkowski or Conor Cody pick up an injury, and what I would say to that is, me too. I'm absolutely fucking terrified. The mere thought of Michael Keane and Mason Holgate having to play in this Everton defence is worrying. Not so much Mason if he's next to one of James Tarkowski or Conor Cody, because I think he could do a relatively decent job. But together, the pair of them together, they are a calamity. They always have been. They've never been a good partnership together, even before we had Tarkowski and Cody. They've never had a good partnership because they're too like for like, not in the sense of as footballers, they're too like for like in the sense of liability wise. They both need a strong centre half next to him who's going to guide them and who's going to give them, the advice, and who's going to see them through a game. But as I said, we've just got to touch wood that Conor Cody doesn't pick up an injury in the World Cup, or B, either of them don't pick up injuries, at all this season, because we would be in a real situation. But as I said, I think Frank, he took a risk, completely changing the whole team, and that risk was that the players that have been training well and knocking on the door and doing well in training won't be good enough to take that chance, and it was proven they weren't good enough to take that chance, and it's disappointing because we're now out of a cup, and a lot of people will say, oh, it's not that deep because we don't need to focus on the cup competitions at the moment anyway because of our position in the league and what happened last season, etc. I disagree with that. For me, Everton Football Club are a club that we all sit here, and we do, as fans, whenever we're talking to a United fan or a Chelsea fan or a Liverpool fan or forget them teams, whenever we're talking to a West Ham fan or a Newcastle fan or a Palace fan, we all sit here and we all bang on about how massive of a football club Everton are. And of course, Everton are a massive football club, 9 league titles, 5 FA Cups, we're an absolutely gigantic football club. But we can't sit here and call ourselves a football club and then ultimately, sit here and say, oh, well, going out of a cup competition is good enough at that stage when we haven't won a trophy since 1995. We simply can't. For me, as I've said it before and I'll say it again, regardless of the league position, Everton simply are a football club that are not in a position to throw the cup games and to say, oh, we're not really interested in that game unless we are absolutely guaranteed to win the league, which we're not, or we've gone far in another competition, except, for example, we're in the semi-final of the Carabao Cup and we have an FA Cup game and we need to make some changes for whatever reason. We're not in a position to just say, yeah, we're not really that interested about the Cup this season because we need to win a trophy. I'm desperate to see Everton win a trophy. That's what football's all about. My best Everton memory was Palace last season. That was my best Everton memory. And that come from pain. It come from anxiety. It come from worry. It come from anxiousness. It come from, that's the same as anxiety. It come from upset. It come from, tears. It come from worry. It come from stress. It come from all of those anger, all of those negative emotions. And it all ended in relief and happiness and joy. Palace, that was my best Everton memory. I shouldn't be sitting here as a 24-year-old Evertonian who's been to America, Croatia, France, all across this country to watch Everton. I shouldn't be sitting here saying my best Everton memory was beating Crystal Palace 3-2 at Goodison Park to stay in the Premier League. I should be sitting here saying my best Everton memory was when we won the FA Cup, when we won the Carabao Cup, when we got far in the Champions League, when we won the league. That's what I should be sitting here saying. And okay, the league and the Champions League may be a bit of a stretch, but beating Bournemouth away in the third round of the Carabao Cup isn't a stretch. And I think Frank made the mistake of that. I do want to talk a little bit more about the goals in a bit more depth, because we conceded 4. I also want to talk about Damari Gray's goal as well, and a little bit about James Garner, because I think he will play on Saturday and it'll be interesting to see how he does again. But let's get into some of the live comments before we do that. Connor Crossan says, hi Cam, mate, you okay? I think we'll win there on Saturday. Frank will have a strong word with the players. I've seen a couple of people say that. I've seen a couple of people saying, don't worry, it's the Everton way. We'll go and beat them on Saturday. And if we do, then absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I'll be over the moon. Great. We've gone there. We've beaten them, in the Premier League. absolutely sound, made up, no issue whatsoever. If we don't, then it continues to pile the pressure on. It continues, for the questions to be asked about Frank Lampard and his ability and whether or not he's good enough. But look, if we win on Saturday, I'll be over the moon because we need to win. It's a Premier League game and we need as many points as we can. How are you, Cam? Bless up, says David. What's happening, my mate? I'm all good. Connor says, spot on. Cam, our forwards couldn't even finish their tea, says Tom. Lavovich says, Frank was rightly disappointed. He gave players a chance, but perhaps too many at once. Nevertheless, players should have performed better. Spot on. Good evening, says David. What's happening? Philip says, we're nothing but embarrassing failures. We have zero chance of winning anything in the foreseeable future. Strong words. Lavovich says, it illustrates the lack of depth and quality in our squad. We were stuffed by Bournemouth to second string. Yep. Eugene says, Lampard's press conference is tomorrow morning. It is. Lavovich says, I forgot your previous reply to this question, but do you think Gordon is unsettled since the move never comes to fruition? No, I just don't think Anthony Gordon's as good as what people think he is, to be honest with you. Anthony Gordon's a kid who, again, I don't know him, so I'm not going to sit here and say he needs to get his head out of his arse or he needs to stop believing the hype or he needs to stop believing, because I don't know him. If you sat me in a room with him and give me half an hour, then I could come out and say, yeah, his ego's through the roof, he needs to get his head out of his arse. But I might come out and go, he's actually just a humble kid who's trying his hardest and struggling at the moment. I don't know, so I'm not going to sit here and make those judgments. Reality is he's been poor recently, and Anthony Gordon, forget him being linked to Chelsea. Forget any rumours of him being 60 million bids. It was never a 60 million pound bid for the start. That makes me laugh. Oh, Everton rejected 60 million for him. We didn't. There was never a bid for 60 million. Forget any rumours of 40 million or whatever. Forget all of that. Anthony Gordon should have been able to absolutely rip the shreds out of that Bournemouth team on Tuesday night. And again, I mean, no disrespect to Bournemouth, but this is a kid who has played a lot of Premier League football, has scored Premier League goals, has given, difficult times to top Premier League defenders, and who was till very recently, who was in the eye of the England manager for a potential call-up to a major tournament. We obviously know that hasn't happened, but he was in that conversation. There was reports about it. Anthony Gordon should have been absolutely ripping that Bournemouth team to bits on Tuesday night. And you ask yourself the question, why didn't he? What's the reason behind that? All he did was throw a silly challenge in that got him a yellow card and should have really got him sent off, if we're being honest. That was all he did in that game. Why? Why didn't he rip that Bournemouth team to bits? Why wasn't he constant? Why wasn't he, showing that ability, showing that quality? Is it because maybe he hasn't got it and it's only comes in, bits and bobs? Is it because there's a deeper issue? I don't know. Me worry isn't really about the reasoning behind it. Me worry is about why aren't we getting the best out of Anthony Gordon? Which I suppose is the worry, is the reasoning behind it. But again, I'm not going to sit here. Fans are very quick, and listen, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Everyone's entitled to say and feel how they want. But fans are very quick to jump on he needs to get his head out of it. Same with the Calvert-Lewin situation. He's not interested. He doesn't want to play. He's faking it. He's obviously not. He's obviously just got injuries. And I don't know Anthony Gordon, so I can't sit here and make judgments on him. But there's issues. And what they are, I don't know. But there's issues. That's what I can tell because it's as clear as day. We haven't got forwards, bottom three in the new year, says Flynn. Wonderless says it's absolutely war against these on Saturday, not unless 3 points or bust. Also, last year's greatest shit sadly proved too well why changing them was the best they did this season. Yeah, I think you're referring to the defence there. Also, how are you doing on the whole? Says Wonderlust. Me, I'm okay. I'm okay, to be honest. I'm okay. I'm looking forward to the break, to be honest, because I'm looking forward to be able to do different type of content and not focus on Everton disappointing us every week. But I'm doing okay. I hope you're doing well yourself, mate. January is the month that cares, says Wonderlust. And Noah says, will Everton be in a relegation battle? If we don't address the issues in the summer, then we certainly will be in a relegation. The issues in January that we need, then we certainly will be in a relegation battle in the near future. But hopefully, we will address those because we need to. We've got no real option. Let's have a little conversation then about the goals. So obviously the first one, which was the killer really, because it comes so early on in the game. And look, the first one, I've seen a couple of people saying Begovic should do better for. I haven't seen it again once because there's not a chance I'm watching the highlights of that game. Not a chance. Look, it's a wicked deflection. I think it comes off James Garner. And unfortunately, when you have a wicked deflection like that, it could go anywhere, and this one went in the back of the net, and it was the start we we didn't really need, to be honest. It was the start we didn't really need. We very much didn't need to go 1-0 behind so early on, and give us that uphill battle. Given we already know we've got a distinct lack of quality going forward, given we already know we've got a distinct lack of creativity going forward, we really didn't need to be going 1-0 down so early on. We did go 1-0 down, and then it was always about what the impetus of this Everton team was going to be. Were we going to get at them? Were we going to play around them? Where the likes of Anthony Gordon and Dwight McNeil, who started the game, going to show their quality as... Sorry, not Dwight McNeil. Dwight McNeil didn't start, did he? Who started? See, I completely forgot who started the game, to be honest with you, because I've blanked out my mind that much. Hang on, let me bounce on here. I will tell you now because it will show me. Well, maybe it won't. Here we go. That's Bournemouth. Mopey, Gordon. Obviously, you had Vinagre and Patterson as the wing backs. And we didn't show anything. We've done very much what we've done a couple of times this season, which is worrying, and that is the whole, we're getting beat 1-0, but we'll just pass the ball around the midfield. We'll just pass the ball around the back. We'll just piss about with it. We'll just waste time with it. We'll just act like we're winning the game. And that was pretty much how it went for the rest of the first half. No real impetus, no real fight, no real desire, no real anything other than just a complete lack of urgency and pace. The movement was abysmal. The midfield, Garner was picking the ball up and trying to get on it and trying to make things happen, but wasn't really getting involved. As I said, Tom Davis was, not getting involved whatsoever at all in there either. Takore, again, completely forgot he played until I've just seen the team news again. He was abysmal. And you come out in the second half and you're thinking, right, changes need to be made now, and there needs to be a kick up the arse. There needs to be a change of system. There needs to be a change of approach to this second half. And there wasn't. There was absolutely none of that. We continued the same way. They ended up getting the second goal, which was absolutely laughable. Laughable defending, as I said. Holgate should never have been past the ball in the first place because he actually had picked up an injury. He ends up getting the ball passed to him by Begovic on the turn, on a slippy ground. I thought Begovic was shocking the other day as well. I'll admit it, I'm not really bothered. I thought he was absolutely atrocious the other day. Absolutely atrocious. Holgate gets the ball fed into him. Falls over. And that's not even the worst thing, pardon me. That's not even the worst part. That's not even the worst bit. That's not even the most disappointing bit. That's not even the most embarrassing bit, the Holgate slip. That was just what it was. He was hurt and the ball was played to him on a slippy surface and he fell over. The most embarrassing part was the fact that Yerry Mina was stood in the box marking his defender. I'm not even going to say a cross come in, a pass come into the box, and Yerry Mina was so far off his defender, so far off his attacker, that he literally managed to get a shot away. It was, I think, saved or deflected or whatever, and then Michael Keane had no fucking clue where he was or where his man was, and a fella comes in behind him and makes it 2-0. And you're sort of sitting there thinking, I said it in the instant match reaction, I'll say it again to emphasise the point. Had that goal have been conceded on a Sunday morning in an under-10s game, and you were the parent of one of the players, you'd be sitting there thinking, that's fucking schoolboy, that is absolutely... You wouldn't say it because you want to be respectful and they're only kids, but you'd be sitting there thinking, that's schoolboy error, that's schoolboy defending. Really, really poor. I used to be a defender, and I played in some bad teams, and we'd concede goals like that. It'd never be me because I'd be playing, the other side of the pitch, right back. But you'd look and you'd think, that's fucking awful. That is absolutely awful. And we go 2-0 down. We make a couple of substitutes. No shock. 5 minutes later, we get back in the game. Really good goal by Demarai Gray. As I said, I'm not going to sit here and overly criticise Demarai Gray because, he was brought on the pitch to make an impact. He did that. He scored a nice goal. I don't think we'll see that again for a long time, but he come on and he scored a nice goal. And then you're thinking, right, 2-1, 25 minutes to go. Get at them, put pressure on them, use this period of momentum and confidence to go and get a second, go and equalise, and then go and, go and hopefully get a win. And any other team, I think, in the Premier League, at 2-1, being 2-0 down away, and then getting a goal. If you were, tracking this game on live score or whatever it was, you'd see that. You'd go, oh, Everton have pulled one back. And you would expect to go back onto live score in 15 minutes' time and see 2-2 or maybe 3-2 Everton, because the momentum had shifted and the confidence had shifted, etc. It never happens with Everton. It never, ever happens with Everton. We scored the goal to get it back. And instead of getting at them and putting pressure on them and, trying to create something, we just done what we did when we were 1-0 down and continued to pass it around the midfield. Movement completely stopped. Now, at this point, James Garner had been taken off. I thought James Garner was okay, to be fair. Maybe I was a little bit heavily critical of him after the game. I thought he'd done okay. I think the reason he was taken off is because we're going to see him play at the weekend. But I thought he'd done okay. But players just passing it around as if we were 2-1 up, as if we were winning. They then hit us again. Another absolutely defensive disaster class. It's 3-1, and then obviously Patterson makes the mistake and it's 4-1 and the game's over. Yeah, just an absolutely horrendous day night for Everton Football Club. And as the manager mentioned, there was a lot of players there that wanted their opportunity, that were given their opportunity, that should never play for Everton again. But the manager has to take blame as well, because he was at fault. The system wasn't right, the style wasn't right. Ultimately, the way of playing, maybe the instruction was at 2-1, get at them, go and create, go and do something, and the players didn't do it, and then that's a fault on the players then, of course. But we've seen that a couple of times this season where Everton have had a bit of momentum and got back into a game, and instead of attacking it and going and making the most of it, we just sort of sit on it and let it simmer and allow the opposition team to think, actually, do you know what? These got a goal back, but they're not really that great, so we're just going to continue the way we play and go out and get another one. But yeah. Yeah. We're out. We crash out of the cup. We play Bournemouth again on Saturday in the league. Hopefully a much different outcome. Hopefully a much better result for Everton. The preview to that game will be up tomorrow, by the way, so don't forget to look out for that one. But yeah, a really, really bad day at the office. A really, really bad night. One that I'm sure will join the endless list of League Cup fixtures that we forget about quickly. Because yeah, I really don't want to think about this game of football ever again, if I'm being honest with you, now that we've done this review. Anyway, we are going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed this one, please do hit the like button. As I said, I have got a video going up straight after this one where we talk about Connor Cody and Jordan Pickford, Amadou Onana, Garner Gay. We even talk a bit about James Zarkowski, and we also talk about Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well. So it'll be up in about half an hour or so. Please do check that one out and have a look at it for me if you can. But yeah, massive thanks to everybody for watching. Big thanks to everybody for watching live. I really do appreciate it. And if you're watching as a YouTube video, please do leave your thoughts down below and we'll get involved with as many of them as we can. Big thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed it, please do leave a like. Subscribe if you are new, and we'll see you soon.